It's been a rather torrid and uneasy moment for the West African regional body, ECOWAS, as it faces one of its biggest historical and daunting setback, threatening its survival, economic and political future. With the exit of Niger, Burkina Faso and Mali imminent from the West African regional body, an obvious depletion of its strength, force and might at a time it faces a daunting economic climatic and security threat troubling the soul of the Sahel. Does ECOWAS have the political resilience to surmount this threat? All right, I'm glad to have the ECOWAS Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Dr. Abdel Fattah Musa, and former High Commissioner of Burkina Faso and a regional development expert, Ambassador Okubotin Kokodia, both joining us now on Prime Time. Gentlemen, glad to have you join me. All right. ECOWAS is apparently going through what we've just read, what you and I know, crisis with the three West African nations of Mali, Burkina Faso, and of course Niger, is saying their decision is to withdraw is irreversible. That's the word they used. What's your sense? Irreversible?
Well, first and foremost, let me make a little correction. I was Nigeria's High Commissioner to Botswana.
Okay.
And my country's permanent representative to the Secretariat of SADC, Southern African Development Commission.
Yeah.
Yes, so I'm not Botswana's envoy, I'm Nigerian.
Nigeria's envoy, High Commission.
As Nigerian as you are.
Yeah, sorry for that.
Yes, you see, talking about irreversibility in politics is a very daunting word to use. I think there could be dispute within a family, the family of ECOWAS. I think I wouldn't put it as irreversible or irredeemable. I think there should still be a window of opportunity for dialogue and ultimate amicable resolution of the problem. If not today, it could be in a few months or a few years' time. The thing I see with ECOWAS, perhaps stemming from the dictum that one of our founding fathers of African independence movement, Osagebo Kwame Nkrumah, said, "Seek you first the political kingdom, and everything else will be added unto thee." I think that assertion is meant to say, get your independence and use it to drive socio-economic development, because independence alone, without economic wherewithal, economic benefits, it comes to nothing. So there should still be a window of opportunity for dialogue, for negotiation. I think that my colleague Ambassador Musa will stress on. I think so.
Ambassador Musa, by January 29 next year, I mean, it's supposed to the time is supposed to expire that they have given the ECOWAS body, but their decision is irreversible and they want to leave. But of course, they've accepted the 6 months moratorium within which to negotiate. They have, within this period, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have formed what they call AES, Alliance of Sahel States. How will this affect the fortunes of ECOWAS, the negotiation in place, and the 6 months moratorium they've been given to reconsider the irreversibility of their decisions?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. I think the declared decision of the three countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, from ECOWAS, that was made on the 28th of January this year, is a tragedy for the whole region. It affects the community citizens in terms of their movement across borders. It impacts the regional economic integration process, and then all that. And actually, he's at the prestige of ECOWAS as the pioneer regional economic community. You know, so since the advent of their intended departure, there have been a lot of overtures, you know, toward them. Originally, there might have been some missteps from both sides of the divide, the remaining ECOWAS and then the AES countries, the Alliance des États du Sahel. You know, for example, and I think after that period, it became like it was a period of reflection. And ECOWAS has done a lot. First led by His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you know, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who has had his own quiet diplomacy. The authority also reached out to the President of Togo, for Nyasingbe, and then the President of Senegal, Diomaye Faye, you know, to continue the dialogue. But on the eve of the summit, if you remember, the three countries met and said that their decision was irreversible, you know, and then all that, and they were setting up contingency plans for the divorce. Any divorce is very painful. So ECOWAS, there were three issues, three decision points that were made at the summit. You know, first, to recognize the right of the country to secede, you know, from ECOWAS. That is number one. And according to the ECOWAS Revised Treaty of 1993, countries have to give 1 year notice. Yeah. And that 1 year notice expires on the 28th of January next year. Yeah. So from 29th, there are no more without. So the heads of state have recognized that. But in the spirit of this good neighborliness, you know, saying that, listen, our security is intertwined, our economies are intertwined and everything, they've gone an extra mile. You know, one, you know, to say that they are going to provide a 6-month, something like a cooling off period, you know, right, transitional period, during which the facilitators of ECOWAS will continue their engagement to see whether there will be a change of mind. And then finally, you know, they said, okay, if nothing happens, for the ECOWAS Commission to ready the contingency plan for an orderly separation. You know, so these are the decisions that were made. So we have to wait till 29 July of next year, you know, to see whether diplomacy, will actually yield results. And as my colleague here said, we need to apply dialogue, you know, in terms of this very situation, you know, because West Africa, diplomacy. All countries are intertwined, and it will be a tragedy for the two to break apart.
All right, you talked about what each other did right or didn't do right or do wrong. You know, let me take you up on that. You know, ab initio, where do you think that the leaders of ECOWAS, the body itself, with the president of Nigeria, Bola Ahmed Tinubu as the chairman, why do you think they got it, let me use the word wrong, or didn't handle it, maybe for better usage, let me use the phrase, didn't handle it particularly well or diplomatically that caused these three countries to insist that they're no longer staying with ECOWAS? Why do you think they didn't handle it well? And how do you think they could have handled it better? Maybe I'll also come to you with that question.
Well, as you ab initio, when those people, these three countries formed their kind of an association of Sahelian states, and it didn't go very well, didn't go down well with the rest of West Africa, and the kind of statements we had, some of us in the diplomatic arena were a bit surprised, if we could, make statements that could run counter to the very tenets of United Nations, the United Nations Charter on peaceful coexistence. And of course, tempers were very high, and these three governments, the leaderships, talk to their guns. But we look beyond them. The countries are, as we said, they are interrelated, intertwined, interdependent in many ways. Some of the borders are, as we agreed, we know that these borders were forced on Africans. Sometimes you find the same ethnic groups torn between 2-3 countries. And that's you see. Sometimes during election, you see people walk across the borders. So I think initially when this problem happened, they should have resorted to dialogue, send emissaries. Emissaries, I think Nigeria did some of that. Emissaries of senior elder statesmen. Some of them went across to dialogue with this, I think with Niger. I don't know how far with Mali and Burkina Faso. But then a little bit of dialogue continue, especially diplomacy is not all what we see on television screens or read on the pages of newspapers. A lot of it is done behind subterraneanly, behind the scene. So you don't come in and point accusing fingers. And I think I'm still very hopeful that ultimately this will happen, because most of these countries, the Sahelian countries, have peculiar challenges with security, insurgency, especially Islamic insurgency in the Sahelian region. And then these countries, as we notice, are also landlocked. They will need access to export facilities, the sea, to get their things exported. Not that any person, it will be against the law to blockade the countries from accessing the sea legitimately. But I think we should look at dialogue. There is no substitute to dialogue in this matter.
No substitute to dialogue. Yes, he's mentioned security, whichever one you want to choose. So I'm going to ask you, because you started what Dr. Tindomai asking him that question about how could they have handled it better, where did they misstep and all that. I want you to add that to the fact that the Senegalese president, we discussed this earlier, Faye and Nassimwe of Togo, have been detailed to continue to negotiate dialogue with these three nations. I mean, their leaders, the military coup plotters. And Faye says, so far he says, is making headway. But what do you say? Is it talk for talking's sake or to raise hopes? Is he really making headway?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first and foremost, I think at the time that His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu was elected chair of the authority, most of the heads of state, he wasn't actually the head before. It was at the summit of Ecowas in Guinea-Bissau, if I remember, through a year ago. The region was already facing 3 coups at the time, 3 coups. And the heads of state determined, that should be the last coup. Because if you remember, there was a coup in Mali, even twice. There was a coup in Guinea, and then a coup in Burkina Faso. They said, no more. And then, under the chairmanship of, His Excellency, we get a 4th coup, right? So the heads of states were really quite angered by that. They wanted to act, with, sort of all determination, to make sure that the coup virus did not spread any further. You see, but I think one thing that all of us did not actually take into account was the geostrategic transformation of the world during that time. Ecowas had applied maximum sanctions on regimes before.
Yeah.
in Mali in 2012. In fact, similar sanctions like they were imposed on Niger were imposed on Captain Sanogo and his government, and they caved in. Okay, because there was international unity towards democracy. The situation has changed a bit, and I feel, that the 3 member states also took advantage of that to say they were withdrawing, and I feel that that was a very rash decision. In the first place, ECOWAS is not against sub-regional groups, okay, that operate in the country. We've got the Mano River Basin Union that groups Cote d'Ivoire, not Gambia, Senegal. We have Cote d'Ivoire, we have Liberia, we have Sierra Leone and Guinea in that group. And even the 3 countries, the basis upon which they created the AES was the Litako Guruma Authority. The Litako Guruma Authority has been in existence for decades, and it didn't prevent the member states from being members of ECOWAS. All right. So this is the issue. So I feel that going to the extent of saying we are breaking off all relations with our neighbors, I think that was also a rash decision.
But they have reasons. They had reasons. I mean, what their reasons are, one of the major reasons they are giving is that military leaders, speaking through Goita, says that ECOWAS body takes exception to military coups or dictatorship as we have it in these 3 countries, but they pay lip service to the excesses, election fraud, sit-tight syndrome of civilian administrators which go against the grain. Because you're talking about what causes this coup in the first place. Do you think they have a point there?
Certainly. Certainly they have a point there. We've had situations of military administrations in Nigeria. I was old enough to experience.
I'm even talking about civilians. I'm even talking about civilians.
Yes, I'm talking about, I'm going there. Okay. I'm talking about, I was old enough. I was in secondary school, primary secondary school during the Gowon administration. General Yakubu Gowon was a very benign military administration, up to a point where even after the Civil War, it could still go freely to the eastern part of Nigeria and be received like a hero. Yeah, so it's a matter of style of governance. And he was also a very humble man and God-fearing. So then civilian administration, sometimes there's the argument we've been hearing now about, in many parts of West Africa, about state capture. You look at civilians, there isn't much interest. I perceive not much interest in terms of driving the developmental agenda and needs of the people. The same I could accuse ECOWAS of. I assume over concentration on politics. Politics should be an end, should be a means to an end, not an end in itself. If you talk about ECOWAS, for example, how much have you done in terms of benchmarking on things like roads, interconnectivity of our roads? Now you may be concerned about air travel. How many Nigerians, how many West Africans travel by air? I can bet you not up to 10%. Not up to 10%. So civilians themselves should up their games, or else they might not like what might befall them. I will tell you, from discussions in Nigeria, I'm not in government any longer. I'm retired. And I speak with my colleagues and friends all across Africa.
Yes.
These 3 regimes, these 3, I'll call it administrations in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, seem to have enjoyed popularity among the youth all over Africa. And mark you, the youth form the majority. Some of us who are over 50s, 60s are the, what we might call the endangered species. The young people want something very tangible happening.
Something they can look up to.
Precisely. And that is why I think civilians themselves should, civilian administrations and governments should do more by way of delivering the dividends of democracy, or else democracy becomes meaningless.
And that's the point.
Like people will say, do we chop democracy? Why are we going to chop democracy?
What you should be eating.
What you should eat. Do we eat democracy?
Dividends of democracy.
Democracy.
And not democracy itself. Yeah. Now, one of the major benefits of being a member of the Ecowas state is visa-free movement. We all know that. How do you see this now affecting the relationships of the member states of this body and their citizens in the short time we have? The question also of, there's also the fear of the exit threatening free trade movement and of course insecurity.
Yeah, but please let me probably add one point before coming to answer that your question. It's about governance, right? The world is facing a global downturn, economic downturn. It's not only in West Africa, it is all across Africa, right? And one of the key reasons that, were given for the coups in these three countries was the cascading insecurity led by the terrorists, right? We have been under this regime for now. Terrorism has not reduced in any way. On the other hand, fatalities are increasing. And let me tell you, ECOWAS made a strategic choice in 1991 after the collapse of the autocratic regimes in the region to move for electoral democracy, that we've practiced since about 1992 in the region. They are not perfect. And governance, democracy is not an event, it's a process. So what I would say, to those is that when we look at the West Africa region today, just take the elections in Senegal, okay? Take the elections in Ghana, just recently, that the population was able to change government democratically without the use of weapons. That if a government is not performing, it is the ability of the electorate to vote them out of power, and then we move on. That is it. But coming to your specific question about what are the benefits and other things of the regional integration, ECOWAS was the very first region on the continent, and I would say globally, to decree free movement of people, services, and goods. Okay, that alone, because our countries are so intertwined. When you are talking even about infrastructure, you have to talk about the West Africa gas pipeline, which is supplying, gas to vulnerable countries in our region in the period of economic hardship. The Lagos-Abidjan corridor, which is being extended, to other parts of the region, is going to provide transport facilities for them, and it is starting next year. To put it in practice. An allowance has been made for a rail to be added to it. These are some of the benefits. And let me tell you, there are at least 8 million of the citizens of these three countries, minimum 8 million, in one country alone, Cote d'Ivoire. Okay, so if you lose the benefit of free movement, what happens to that population? In Cote d'Ivoire, from all these countries, and there are many from Niger who are in Nigeria, and vice versa. Okay, so this is the issue. ECOWAS is a community, and our primary objective is to make sure that we, build up this community in peace and solidarity. That is the core objective of ECOWAS. So there are all these advantages. Look, ECOWAS has got a number of institutions in those countries that we are talking about. 3 institutions in Burkina Faso alone. If they withdraw, we need to withdraw them with all the staffing problems that will occur with that. The 3 countries owe a lot of money to the ECOWAS Bank for Industry and Development.
All right.
How are you going to, recoup that? Because this is part of the solidarity we are talking about. So there is, both are losers. you know, in this very issue. And that is why the authority decided in their wisdom that we should still leave space for dialogue, and which is going to continue. Dialogue has been part and parcel of the process ever since the advent of the situation.
And we hope that ECOWAS will be able to make the necessary reforms that will, you know, meet with the times, particularly like he was talking, when you consider young people, the young generation. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on the program.